Before we begin, I want you to imagine dedicating your life to someone who ends up treating you like a burden. Imagine giving everything, your time, your energy, your love, and then being told you're just in the way. This story isn't fiction. It's my truth, a truth I stayed silent about for too long. If you've ever felt unappreciated, invisible, or taken for granted, stay with me. This isn't just my story. It might be yours too. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Margaret Turner. I'm years old, and I live in a quiet neighborhood just outside Portland, Oregon. I never thought I'd be telling my story to the world like this, but here I am, because silence, I've learned, is where resentment grows, and I've been silent for far too long. It started after I left my husband. I was in my late 40s, and after years of enduring his anger, his manipulation, his quiet cruelty, I walked away. It nearly broke me, but I did it. I left for my own sanity, and for my daughter, Emily. She was in her early 20s back then, finishing college, so full of potential. I thought she'd be proud. I thought she'd understand. But instead, she turned cold. She said I gave up on our family, that I broke everything. She blamed me. Still, I stayed close. She married young, had children fast. Her job demanded long hours, and her marriage, well, it didn't last. Suddenly, she was a single mom of 2, and I was there, always there. I moved into the guest house behind her place. I cooked meals. I changed diapers. I drove the kids to school, to soccer practice, to birthday parties. I sat through fevers and science projects, first heartbreaks and nightmares. I held it all, quietly, without asking for much. I thought that was what love meant. You give, you hold, you show up. But Emily, she never softened. If anything, she hardened with time. She'd snap at me in front of the kids, roll her eyes, tell me I was too involved, too old-fashioned, too much. You baby them too much, she'd say. They'll never grow up right with you hovering like that. Sometimes I'd hear her on the phone with friends, laughing. My mom? She's basically free childcare with opinions. What can I do? And I'd laugh too, quietly, from the kitchen, pretending it didn't sting. But it did. Oh, it did. What kept me going were the children, my grandchildren. They clung to me like I was their anchor. They'd run into my arms after school, curl up beside me on the couch. When they got older, they'd talk to me about everything. School, crushes, fights with their mom. I knew their hearts. I was their safe place. And yet, I couldn't ignore the way Emily looked at me, like I was something temporary, a shadow in the background of her life. Not a mother, not a woman with a past, just a body that cooked, cleaned, and made sure her life didn't fall apart. I began to wonder if she ever really saw me at all. Then came the day that changed everything. It started with fatigue, not just tiredness, but a bone-deep exhaustion that wouldn't leave. I couldn't walk from the kitchen to the porch without needing to sit down. I was losing weight. My hands shook. The doctor ran some tests, then more tests. Then he sat me down with those eyes that try to soften the blow. Cancer. Aggressive. I went home that day with a silence heavier than anything I'd ever carried. I didn't know how to tell Emily. I was afraid, not of the illness, but of her reaction. What if she saw it as just another inconvenience? I waited 3 days. Then I told her. She looked up from her phone, blinked, and said, "Oh, well, we'll figure something out." Her tone was so flat, so distant. Later that week, she dropped it in passing. "You should probably hire a nurse, Mom. I really don't have the time for all that." That moment, that's when I stopped pretending. She didn't ask how I felt. She didn't offer to take me to appointments. Just hire a nurse, like I was someone else's problem now. So I did. I picked up the phone. And that decision, made in silence, with a heart still aching, would be the first step toward everything that came next. I just didn't know it yet. The nurse arrived on a Wednesday morning. Her name was Lisa Coleman, 38 years old, with short chestnut hair and kind eyes that had clearly seen a lot. She had that type of quiet strength, the kind of presence that didn't demand space, but somehow filled it anyway. Emily wasn't home when she first came by. It was just me, sitting on the porch wrapped in a shawl, pretending the crisp Oregon air didn't cut through my bones. Lisa walked up with a clipboard and a smile that didn't feel forced, not like the ones I was used to. "Mrs. Turner?" she asked. "Margaret," I corrected. "Just Margaret." She nodded, and from the moment she stepped inside, something shifted. There was no awkwardness, no hesitation. She wasn't intrusive or overly cheery. She just saw me, not as a patient, not as a problem. Just a woman who needed a little help. The first week was simple. Medication schedules, food prep, light cleaning, doctor's appointments. But Lisa did more than that. She noticed things. She saw when my hands trembled before I even did. She brought warm socks without being asked. She refilled the bird feeder because she figured the view might cheer you up. Little things. Things Emily hadn't done in years. It wasn't just her actions. It was how she talked to me. Like I mattered. Like my thoughts weren't an inconvenience. We'd sit on the porch after lunch, and I'd tell her about the garden I used to keep before my body turned on me. She'd listen, really listen, and then say something like, "You should tell me which flowers to plant. I've got the hands, you've got the vision." I hadn't smiled like that in a long time. When Emily came by to see me, and I say see me generously because she mostly stood in the doorway scrolling through her phone, she didn't ask how I was feeling. Her eyes darted around the house, focused on what Lisa was doing, or not doing. "How's the nurse?" she asked one afternoon, sipping her iced coffee like it was the only thing that mattered. "She has a name," I replied. Emily raised an eyebrow. "Okay, how's Lisa?" "She's wonderful," I said, maybe too firmly. "She takes good care of me." Emily didn't respond. She just nodded, her lips pressed tight, and left a few minutes later. No goodbye hug, no checking my prescriptions, nothing. It was around that time I started noticing the change in myself. The more Lisa cared for me, the more I realized how little care I'd allowed myself to receive over the years. Not just during the illness, but before, during the marriage, after the divorce, even with Emily, especially with Emily. One evening, Lisa sat with me while I waited for the results of another scan. I was quiet, spiraling in my own mind, and she said gently, "You've carried a lot of people for a long time, haven't you?" I just looked at her. "You don't have to keep holding everyone up," she added. "Let someone hold you for once." I cried that night. Not just tears, those deep, aching sobs you save for when you know no one's listening, except someone was, and she didn't look away. The strange thing was, Emily began visiting more often after that, but it wasn't warmth she brought. It was energy, tense, distracted, sharp, like she was watching, waiting, measuring. She asked more questions, but they weren't about me. "How many hours does Lisa work? Does she cook for you too? Do you really need someone here every day?" It wasn't concern. It was possession, control, like she was trying to reassert her place in a house she'd long abandoned emotionally. One night, after she left abruptly, Lisa looked at me and asked, "Does she always talk to you like that?" And for the first time in my life, I said, "Yes," and I let her. The truth settled between us like a heavy fog. That night, I sat alone in my room and thought about everything I'd given. Time, love, years, and how invisible I'd become in the process. I looked at the framed photos of my grandchildren on the shelf, and then at a picture of Emily from her wedding. I used to think that photo was beautiful. Now all I saw was distance. The next morning I called my lawyer. It was time to make a change, quietly, deliberately. I had nothing left to prove, but I still had something left to protect. The day I met with the lawyer, the air felt different. I could still feel the ache in my joints, the fatigue from the night before, but there was something else bubbling beneath all that, something I hadn't felt in years. Control. I'd made the call early that morning, while Lisa was out picking up my medication. It was the same lawyer who had handled my divorce decades ago. He was surprised to hear from me, but kind. We scheduled a private meeting at his office for the following afternoon. I didn't tell Emily. When Lisa drove me there, she didn't ask questions. She simply adjusted the seat warmer in the car, passed me my scarf, and said, "Call if you need me." I looked back at her before walking into the building. I wanted to say thank you, but the words stuck in my throat. I think she understood. Sitting across from Mr. Halloway, my lawyer, was surreal. We were older now. He'd gone gray. I'd lost weight, but he still had that same calm, measured presence. As he flipped through the old paperwork, he glanced up at me and said, "You never updated your will after your divorce, Margaret." I nodded. "I know. That's why I'm here." When I told him what I wanted, he hesitated. "Are you sure?" he asked gently. "This isn't a small change." "I'm sure," I replied, with a firmness that surprised even me. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to hurt Emily, but I also couldn't keep pretending that our relationship was anything other than what it had become, a transaction. And now that I was finally being cared for with true compassion, I could see it clearly. My new will named my grandchildren as equal beneficiaries. I made arrangements to set up education trusts for them, and I added Lisa, not because I owed her, but because she deserved it. She treated me with dignity when no one else did. I signed the papers, sealed them away, and walked out of that office with a strange sense of peace. But that peace wouldn't last long. Emily showed up unannounced 2 days later. She walked in like she still lived there, barely nodding to Lisa as she passed her in the hallway. I was in the kitchen, trying to eat something small. My appetite hadn't been great lately. She tossed her purse on the counter and leaned against the fridge. "So," she said, arms crossed, "you've been spending a lot of time with the nurse." I blinked at her. "Lisa. Her name is Lisa." "Right, Lisa." Her tone was tight, clipped. "The kid said she's been driving them to school." "She offered," I said carefully. "It helps me, and they like her." Emily laughed without humor. "Of course they do. She's probably spoiling them to get on your good side." I stared at my daughter, unsure if I was shocked or just tired of being shocked. "Why would she need to get on my good side?" Emily hesitated. "I don't know. People have motives. You're not naive, are you, Mom?" That word, naive. After everything, after decades of cleaning up her life and holding hers together with my bare hands, she called me naive. I stood slowly, bracing myself on the edge of the table. "Lisa hasn't asked me for a single thing, Emily. Not once. And in case you haven't noticed, she's the only person treating me like I matter." That hit her. I saw it in her eyes, but she covered it with a scoff. "Whatever, just don't be stupid about your money, okay?" She left 5 minutes later, didn't even say goodbye. I sat in that silence for a long time, staring at the front door she'd slammed shut. That evening, I found Lisa folding towels in the laundry room. She looked up at me with those steady eyes. "Rough day?" she asked. I nodded. "They've all been rough lately. But this one left a mark." Lisa didn't push. She just nodded and kept folding. It was the first time in years I felt truly seen. And more than that, I felt worthy of being seen. I realized then that love isn't just about blood. It's about presence, respect, kindness. And sometimes the people who give you those things aren't the ones who share your DNA. They're the ones who walk in when everyone else walks out. Days passed, and with each one, I felt both stronger and weaker at the same time. Stronger in my resolve, weaker in my body. The treatments were brutal. I'd sit through them in silence, letting the IV drip into my veins like it was pulling pieces of me out instead of healing anything. My hair thinned. My appetite disappeared. The mirror stopped feeling like my friend. I no longer recognized the woman staring back at me. But through it all, Lisa stayed. She was there when the nausea hit. She was there when my legs gave out one morning, and I collapsed in the hallway. She caught me, literally caught me, and didn't let me fall. She stayed up late making bone broth from scratch when she found out it was the only thing I could stomach. She didn't just care for me, she cared about me. And Emily? She dropped in once, every few days maybe. Sometimes with the kids, sometimes not. She'd hover near the door like she had somewhere better to be. Always checking her phone, always distracted. Every visit felt like an obligation she couldn't wait to cross off. One afternoon, after a particularly rough treatment, I was lying on the couch, a blanket pulled over me. Lisa sat quietly nearby, reading. Emily came in unannounced as usual, sunglasses still on, coffee in hand. She barely looked at me. "You really need her here every day?" she asked, nodding toward Lisa. Lisa didn't even flinch. She kept reading. "Yes," I said plainly. Emily snorted. "You're being dramatic. I mean, I know you're sick, but..." "She's not family, Mom." That word again. Family. I turned my head slowly toward her. My voice came out quieter than I expected, but sharper than I intended. "No, she's not. She's something better. She's present." Emily rolled her eyes and paced the room. "This is ridiculous. You act like I've never been here for you." "You haven't," I said, the words catching even me off guard. She froze, 1 foot mid-step. Her mouth opened and closed like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. I didn't say more. I didn't need to. She left a few minutes later, muttering something about needing to pick up the kids. After she was gone, Lisa looked up from her book and said softly, "You okay?" "No," I whispered. "But I will be." Later that night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the quiet hum of the oxygen machine in the background. I thought about everything I'd swallowed over the years, all the times I put Emily's needs ahead of my own, all the birthdays, breakups, meltdowns, and moments when I dropped everything just to be there. And now I was asking for one thing: support, and she couldn't give it. She didn't even try. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about her being busy, or overwhelmed, or tired. It was about choice, and she'd chosen distance, over and over again. The next morning, Lisa brought me breakfast on a tray: toast, eggs, and sliced strawberries. I hadn't asked for strawberries. She just remembered I liked them. "Thank you," I murmured, taking the tray with trembling hands. She smiled and said, "It's what you deserve." That simple phrase stayed with me all day. It was what I deserved, not the guilt, not the blame, not the cold visits or the eye rolls, not being treated like a burden. For the first time in my life, I let that thought bloom without shame. I deserve more, and I wasn't afraid to claim it. Lisa became my shadow, but in the best possible way. She moved through the house with quiet ease, never overbearing, never invasive, just there, steady, constant. And it was that consistency that began to heal something deeper in me, something I didn't even realize was broken. She didn't pry, but she noticed. The way I winced when I stood, the way I rubbed my temples when a memory hit too hard, the way I stared a second too long at the window when the grandkids' laughter echoed faintly from the backyard. One afternoon, I was sitting in the garden with a blanket across my lap when she came out with 2 cups of tea. It was chilly for spring, but I liked it that way. The air made me feel awake. She handed me a mug and sat beside me. "You always look out this window," she said gently. "What are you thinking about?" I didn't answer right away. I watched a blue jay hop along the fence, its feathers flickering like silk in the breeze. "I think about how much I've given," I said quietly, "and how little I've asked for." Lisa didn't respond. She just sipped her tea and waited. "I raised Emily," I continued. "I held her when she was sick, when she cried over boys, when her marriage ended. I stayed up all night baking cupcakes for her kids' birthdays. I canceled plans, skipped holidays, ignored my own health just to keep her life moving. And she doesn't see it," Lisa said softly. I nodded. "Worse, she sees it and still treats me like I'm disposable." There was a long silence between us. Not uncomfortable, just full, like the air had weight. Then Lisa said something I'll never forget. "Sometimes, the people we give the most to are the ones who think we owe it to them." The truth of it stung, but it also soothed something raw inside me. She understood, not just my situation, but me. That evening, I sat alone in the den and stared at the old filing cabinet where I kept my important documents: insurance, property deeds, medical directives, and my will. I'd never changed it, not since my divorce. Everything still listed Emily as the sole heir. Back then, it made sense. She was my only child, my legacy. But now, she wasn't living like a daughter. She wasn't showing up like family. I thought about the grandkids, sweet, curious, kind-hearted. They'd been shaped more by my love than Emily's presence. I thought about Lisa, how quickly she'd become more than just a nurse, a friend, a caretaker, a quiet protector. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I called Mr. Halloway again. We met 2 days later, and I told him, firmly and clearly, that I wanted to revise everything. "My grandchildren," I said, "they get equal shares, and Lisa, she gets the house and the savings account." He raised an eyebrow. "Your daughter, she gets nothing." He paused, then nodded slowly. "Understood." I signed the papers with a hand that shook slightly, not from doubt, but from the weight of the decision. When it was done, I felt lighter, freer, like I'd taken back something I didn't even realize was mine. Later that evening, Lisa found me on the porch again. "You've been quiet today," she said. "I made a decision," I replied. "A big one." She looked concerned but didn't press. "I just realized," I continued, "that I've spent my whole life trying to prove my worth to people who never deserved it." Lisa placed a warm hand over mine. "Then maybe it's time you stop proving and start living." I looked at her then, really looked at her, and for the first time in years, I felt something settle inside me. Not peace, not yet, but purpose. The calm didn't last. It never does it? A few days after I signed the new will, I overheard a conversation between Emily and one of the kids. She'd stopped by unannounced again, claiming she just wanted to check in, though she spent most of the time fiddling with her phone and asking questions that weren't really questions. "Has the nurse been sleeping here?" she asked my grandson, when she thought I wasn't listening. I was in the hallway, out of sight, but her voice carried. "Does she use Nana's car? What about the credit cards? Has she bought anything for herself?" My blood turned cold. It wasn't concern. It wasn't worry. It was investigation. I stepped into the room slowly. "Emily, can I speak with you for a moment?" She looked up, startled, then followed me into the kitchen. "What is it?" she asked, arms crossed. I looked her square in the eyes. "Why are you interrogating my grandchildren about Lisa?" Her expression flickered. Guilt, annoyance, and then defensiveness. Always defensiveness. "I'm just trying to protect you," she said. "You're sick, Mom. People like her take advantage of people like you." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I spoke calmly, evenly, like I was reading off a recipe card. "Lisa has shown me more respect, more kindness, and more care in a month than you have in 10 years. Emily scoffed. "She's being paid." "And you?" I asked. "What's your excuse?" She fell silent. Then she said the words that sealed everything for me. "You're being stupid, Mom. You don't even know this woman. You're just lonely." That word. Stupid. I stood up slowly, my legs trembling not from weakness, but from rage contained over a lifetime. "I may be sick," I said, "but I'm not stupid, and I'm not lonely. I've just stopped confusing proximity with love." Her face went blank. I knew then that she sensed something had shifted, that the control she thought she had, emotional, financial, moral, was slipping. She left in silence that day, her heels clicking down the hallway like gunshots. Later that night, I sat at the dining table with Lisa and told her everything. She listened without interrupting, her face calm but concerned. "Do you want me to step away for a while?" she asked gently. "Give things some space?" "No," I said firmly. "This is my home. You are not the problem." We sat in silence for a moment. Then I reached for her hand and squeezed it. "I need you here." Her eyes softened. "Then I'm here." The next week passed quietly. Emily didn't visit. The kids still came by after school, bright and sweet as always, but I could sense something in their voices, something off, hesitation, confusion. Emily had said something to them. I didn't know what, but I could feel it. And then, one afternoon, I got a call from Mr. Halloway. "Your daughter came by my office," he said. My stomach dropped. "She asked about your will, pressed for information." I couldn't disclose anything, of course, but she's suspicious. "She's angry." I thanked him, hung up the phone, and sat in silence for nearly an hour. Emily knew, or at least she suspected. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees and the sky burned gold, I walked into the garden and stood barefoot on the grass. The air was cool, the wind sharp, but I felt alive. This wasn't about money. It never was. It was about legacy, about what we leave behind, not in bank accounts or deeds, but in people, in love, in memories. And I'd finally decided that my legacy would not be silence, not anymore. It happened the next morning. The knock on the door wasn't frantic. It was sharp, controlled, the kind of knock that says, "I'm not here for pleasantries." Lisa opened it. I was just finishing my tea when I heard Emily's voice cut through the air. "I want to talk to my mother." Alone. Lisa didn't flinch. She looked back at me, waiting for a signal. I gave a small nod, and she stepped aside. Quiet, steady, present, always present. Emily stormed into the living room like she owned the place. Her eyes were wild, her face tight. "I want the truth," she said. I didn't bother asking about what. I already knew. "I spoke to your lawyer," she continued. "He didn't tell me anything, but he didn't have to. I can feel it." I set my cup down gently. "And what do you feel, Emily?" She stared at me. "That you're giving everything to her, to Lisa, a stranger, over your own daughter." There it was. Not worry, not sadness, not regret, just entitlement. I looked at her for a long time, my silence making her squirm. She hated when I didn't respond. She always had. "I gave you everything I had," I said finally. "My time, my energy, my life, and you gave me distance, blame, silence. I didn't—" "Yes," I interrupted, quietly but firmly. "You did. And when I got sick, you didn't ask how to help. You asked how to delegate." Her arms folded across her chest. Defensive, always defensive. I have kids, Mom. A career. I can't just drop everything. I did, I said. I dropped everything for you, over and over for years, and now I need someone, and you're angry that it's not you. She looked away, biting her lip. Then she snapped back. She's manipulating you. She's caring for me, I said. And there's a difference. Emily's voice rose. You're seriously leaving her everything? After all I've done for you? I stood, slowly. My body hurt. My legs were weak. But I stood anyway. You never asked what I needed. Not once. You only saw what you thought you were owed. Tears welled in her eyes. But they weren't tears of sorrow. They were rage, disbelief. She's not family, she yelled. No, I said. She's better. And that broke her. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just froze. And then she whispered something I wish I could forget. You'll regret this. She turned and walked out without another word. The door slammed behind her, and for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't flinch. Lisa came in a few minutes later, silent as always. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. She just sat beside me. I think she hates me now, I said. She doesn't hate you, Lisa replied. She just hates that you're not under her control anymore. I looked down at my hands. They used to be strong, hands that raised a child, ran a household, carried too much weight. Now they trembled in stillness. She always said I was the strong one, I whispered. You are, Lisa said. You just forgot that strength can say no too. That night I lay in bed replaying everything. All the years I swallowed pain. All the ways I justified her behavior. All the times I convinced myself she'd grow out of it, or grow into love. But some people don't grow into love. They grow into need. And when they don't get what they want, they punish. And now? Now she couldn't punish me anymore. I'd chosen differently, and that choice was already changing everything. After that day, something inside the house shifted. The silence between Emily and me was no longer the kind that waited to be broken. It was the kind that built walls, cold, tall, and deliberate. She stopped visiting entirely. For days, no calls, no texts, just quiet. But it wasn't peaceful, because outside the silence, she was busy. Lisa began to hear whispers from the neighbors. Is it true that woman is living there full-time now? I heard Margaret changed her will, gave it all to the nurse, that poor daughter, after everything she did for her mom. The pity wasn't for me. It was for Emily. She was painting a picture of herself as the abandoned daughter, the victim. And Lisa, she was the villain, the homewrecker, the manipulator, the gold digger. I told Lisa to ignore it, but I could see the way it chipped at her. She started avoiding the front yard. She stopped chatting with the mailman. One night, I caught her crying quietly in the laundry room, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her hoodie. This is my mess, I told her. No, she said, barely above a whisper. I'm the one being accused, and I can't even defend myself. I put a hand on her shoulder. You don't have to. I know the truth. But the damage was already crawling into the corners of the house. The kids, my grandchildren, they started pulling away too. Not drastically, not cruelly, but there was a hesitance, a weight in their eyes. They came by less. They stopped asking Lisa for help with homework or snacks. One evening, my oldest grandson sat next to me on the porch, quiet. Mom said you're mad at her, he mumbled. I looked at him, heartbreaking. I'm not mad, I said. I'm just tired of pretending things are okay when they're not. He stared at his shoes. She said Lisa's stealing our house. That hit me harder than any insult ever had. Lisa came out with lemonade, saw the tension and paused. I shook my head gently, and she retreated without a word. I turned back to him. Lisa isn't stealing anything. She's taking care of me. He didn't answer. He just nodded, uncomfortable, and changed the subject. After he left, I sat in the dark for a long time. Lisa joined me again, and we watched the porch lights from the houses down the street flicker on, one by one. I should leave, she said finally. I turned to her, stunned. What? If I go, maybe she'll back off. Maybe the kids will come back. I shook my head. No, you don't get to be punished for being kind. She looked at me with tired eyes. But I am. And I realized then that Emily's war wasn't just against me. It was against anyone who gave me the love she refused to offer. She couldn't stand to see someone else do what she wouldn't. Couldn't stand that I'd chosen someone else, not out of spite, but out of need. That week, Lisa stayed quieter, still helpful, still warm. but I could feel her pulling into herself, protecting her heart, and I hated that. Emily didn't just want to punish me. She wanted to erase Lisa from my life, but I had made my choice, and now I had to protect it. The moment everything cracked open didn't come with yelling or slamming doors. It came in the form of footsteps, heavy, fast, intentional. I was in the living room, dozing under a blanket, when I heard the front door burst open. Lisa had stepped out just minutes earlier to run an errand. I assumed it was her, until I heard the voice. "Emily, where is she?" she called, her voice sharp and cold. Before I could sit up fully, she was already in the room, face flushed, eyes wild. "Emily, what are you doing?" She ignored me. "Where is she?" she asked again, louder. "Where's Lisa?" "She's not here right now," I said, forcing myself upright. My heart was already racing. Emily began pacing. "Good, because I swear to God, Mom, if I see her again in my house," I cut her off. "This is not your house." The words hung in the air like smoke. She froze. "What did you just say?" I steadied my breath. My body trembled, not just from illness, but from something older, deeper, rage, pain. All those years of swallowing every slight, every cold shoulder, every eye roll. It was all boiling up now. "You don't live here," I said calmly. "You don't get to barge in. You don't get to threaten anyone." "I'm not threatening her," she hissed. "I'm protecting you." "From who?" I asked. "From the only person who hasn't abandoned me in months?" She stared at me, her eyes narrowing. "She's using you." I stood, my knees nearly buckling under the weight of the moment. "No, Emily. She's caring for me. Something you stopped doing a long time ago." That hit her. She took a step back, as if I'd slapped her. I continued, voice low but firm. "You come here like a storm. You throw accusations, spread lies, and now you want to run the person who saved me out of this house? She's not family, Mom." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "Neither are you anymore." That broke her. Her face crumpled, lips trembling, eyes filling fast with tears she wouldn't let fall. "You don't mean that," she whispered. I didn't respond, because part of me did. She looked around the room, as if seeing it for the first time. The photos of the grandkids on the shelves. The quilt Lisa brought home from the thrift store because it looked like something cozy. The stack of medical forms organized neatly by the front door. This wasn't her space anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. She turned toward the door, voice sharp and brittle. "You're going to regret this." I didn't stop her. I didn't follow. I just sank back into the couch and let the silence wrap around me like a second skin. Lisa came home a few minutes later. I didn't say anything at first. She set down the groceries, looked at me, and knew. "She was here?" I nodded. Lisa sighed, her shoulders sinking. "I think I need to stay somewhere else for a while," she said. I looked up at her, eyes tired but clear. "No, she's the one who needs to leave, not you." That night, I lay awake again, but not from fear or regret. For the first time in decades, I had drawn a line, and I wasn't stepping back. I thought Emily had reached her limit, that after our last confrontation, she'd retreat, maybe even reflect, but I was wrong. She didn't retreat. She retaliated. It started subtly. A letter in the mailbox from a local probate attorney. A formal request to verify the validity of my new will. A few days later, I received a notice that she'd filed a petition claiming I'd been unduly influenced while drafting it. Lisa found the paperwork first. She brought it in, her face pale, hands shaking. "Did you know about this?" I didn't, but I wasn't surprised. Emily wasn't just hurt, she was humiliated, and humiliation in her world demanded action. It didn't matter that Lisa had never asked me for a penny. It didn't matter that my mental faculties were intact. None of that mattered to someone like her. Someone who believed love was earned by proximity, not presence. I called my lawyer immediately. "She doesn't have a case," he assured me. "You were of sound mind. There's no evidence of coercion. But it'll get messy." Messy. That word hung heavy in the air for days. Emily didn't stop there. She called my siblings, people she hadn't spoken to in years, telling them I was being manipulated. She contacted the neighbors, even tried to convince my doctor to sign off on a statement questioning my capacity. He refused, bless him. But still, the damage rippled. People looked at me differently at the pharmacy. I heard whispers in the grocery store. Even the nurse at my oncology clinic hesitated when she asked, "Do you have family supporting you through this?" And through it all, Lisa stayed. She never asked me to defend her, never complained. She just kept showing up, refilling my pill organizer, prepping my bland meals, and sitting beside me during the hardest nights when the nausea came in waves. One morning, I found her outside, cleaning the front porch in silence. Her shoulders were tense, her movements sharp. I stepped out, clutching my robe. "You okay?" I asked. She hesitated. Then she turned to me and said, "I never wanted this." I knew what she meant. I didn't come here for money, or property, or a legacy. I just came to help. I nodded. "And you did, more than you know." Her eyes filled, but she blinked the tears away. "Then why does it feel like I'm being punished for it?" I didn't have an answer. That night, Emily showed up again. No knock, just the sound of the front door creaking open like a storm on the horizon. Lisa was in the kitchen. Emily made a beeline straight for me. "You don't see it, do you?" she said, standing over me. "She's isolating you. She's made you believe I'm the enemy." I stared at her. "You made yourself the enemy, Emily." Her face twisted. "I am your daughter, and I am your mother," I said quietly. "A mother you've taken for granted your entire adult life." She turned, ready to leave, but then stopped at the hallway where Lisa stood, frozen. They locked eyes, and for a second, I saw it. Pure, unfiltered hate in Emily's expression. It wasn't jealousy, it was fear. She was losing control, losing her narrative, and worst of all, losing her image of herself as the good daughter. I spoke before she could. "If you keep attacking the people who love me, you won't just lose the inheritance, you'll lose me." She didn't say another word, just slammed the door behind her like a warning shot. The next morning, I called my lawyer again. "I want everything documented," I told him. "Every visit, every threat, every legal move she makes. Because Emily may have declared war, but I wasn't fighting with fists. I was fighting with clarity, with truth, with boundaries long overdue. The cancer spread faster than we expected. By late summer, I was thinner than I'd ever been. My body was a collection of bones and bruises, and my skin carried the pale yellow tint of too much medication, too little nourishment. The simplest things, bathing, brushing my hair, standing, became victories. But Lisa never wavered. She adjusted everything around me without ever making me feel less than. She treated me with the same dignity on my weakest days as she did when I could still walk down to the mailbox by myself. We didn't talk much those days, not because there wasn't anything to say, but because so much had already been said. We'd entered a space where silence was comfort, not emptiness. The grandkids came by less frequently. Emily didn't bring them anymore, but occasionally they'd come on their own, ride their bikes, knock on the back door, sit beside me on the porch without saying much. Their presence was enough. One afternoon, my youngest granddaughter slipped a drawing into my lap, a picture of me and Lisa, both with big, smiling faces. She'd written "My two grandmas" in crayon. I couldn't hold back the tears. Lisa saw it and froze. Then she knelt beside me and hugged me in silence. That night, I cried harder than I had in months. Not because I was afraid to die, but because I'd finally found what love felt like, and I didn't want to leave it. Then, one Sunday morning, Emily came back, unannounced, as always. But something about her was different this time. Her makeup was minimal. Her clothes were simple. No designer handbag, no flashy sunglasses, just her, and a small weathered envelope in her hand. Lisa was in the backyard. Emily walked in, stood in front of me, and didn't say a word for what felt like forever. Then she placed the envelope on the table. "What's this?" I asked, my voice raspy. "A letter," she said, "from Dad. One I found after he died. I never told you." My hands trembled as I picked it up. The handwriting was unmistakable. He'd written it to her, years ago, and in it, he admitted what I'd always known, that he was cruel, that I'd left to save myself, that I'd done the right thing, and he told her to forgive me. Tears slid down my cheeks as I finished reading. Emily stood still, tears in her own eyes. "I blamed you because it was easier than blaming him. And then I just kept doing it, even when I knew better." I looked up at her. "And now?" I asked. Her voice cracked. "Now I know I failed you." The pain in her voice was real, not performative, not dramatic, just human. Lisa returned just as the moment reached its peak. She paused in the doorway, unsure. Emily turned to her. "I was wrong about you," she said. "I let my pride get in the way. I let fear run everything. Lisa nodded slowly, saying nothing. Then Emily turned back to me. I don't expect anything, she whispered. Not forgiveness, not the house, not a place back in your life. I had to say it. And for the first time, I believed her. I reached for her hand. I don't hate you, Emily, I said. But I can't pretend we're not different now. She nodded. I know. She left a few minutes later. No drama, no slamming doors, just quiet. The kind that feels like the closing of a very long, very painful chapter. Lisa sat beside me as the sun dipped lower behind the trees. You okay? She asked. I nodded. I'm tired. And I was. But not just from the cancer. I was tired of carrying the weight of unspoken truths. Tired of begging for love in places where it was rationed like currency. But now, I'd said everything that needed to be said. And I'd heard what I needed to hear. Forgiveness isn't a door swinging open. Sometimes, it's just the lock quietly clicking loose. The day I truly let go wasn't loud. It was quiet, almost ordinary. The sun came in through the kitchen window just right, casting that golden light that makes everything look softer. Lisa was humming a tune I didn't recognize while slicing apples. The smell of cinnamon lingered in the air. She'd started baking again, saying it reminded her of simpler times. And me? I was wrapped in my favorite blanket, in the armchair by the window, watching the trees move in the breeze like they'd been waiting for me to finally notice them. Emily came by that afternoon. She didn't announce herself. She didn't have to anymore. There was no makeup this time, no tension in her shoulders, just her, holding a small tray with a cup of tea and a scone, store-bought, but warm. I brought your favorite, she said softly. I smiled. You remembered. She placed the tray in front of me and sat across, folding her hands nervously in her lap. Can I stay a while? You already are. We sat like that for a while. No accusations, no digging through old wounds, just two women, one older, one finely grown, sharing space. She looked at me, eyes red-rimmed. I know things can't go back to how they were. They shouldn't, I said gently. But that doesn't mean they can't move forward. She nodded slowly. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I sipped my tea. You don't, I said honestly. But I'm giving it anyway. A tear slipped down her cheek. Why? Because forgiveness, I said, isn't about freeing you. It's about freeing me. Lisa came in then, pausing when she saw Emily. They locked eyes, and I held my breath. I'm sorry, Emily said quietly, for everything I said, for everything I tried to do. Lisa nodded, her expression unreadable. Thank you. That's all. Not a hug, not a grand gesture, just mutual acknowledgement, like survivors of different storms, standing on the same patch of land for the first time. Emily stayed for dinner that night. She helped Lisa in the kitchen. They didn't talk much, but there was no tension, just a new, fragile truce. After everyone left the room, I reached for the folder that held the updated will. I opened it one last time. Reread the names, the distribution, everything exactly the way I'd chosen. I didn't change a thing, not out of spite, but because the decision had never been about punishment. It had been about truth. Emily was no longer the center of my story, and that was okay. She was still part of it, but not the axis around which I spun. My legacy would be what I left behind, in the hearts of those who loved me out loud, the grandchildren who would remember my laugh, not my silence, the woman who showed me kindness when the world turned cold, the version of myself that finally chose peace over obligation. That night, I wrote a letter, not to Emily, not to Lisa, but to myself. I wrote that I was proud of the woman who finally said enough, that I was proud of the grandmother who gave her heart without conditions, that I was proud of the woman who stopped asking to be chosen and chose herself instead. I folded the letter, placed it in the drawer beside my bed, and lay down with the softest smile. This story didn't end in revenge. It ended in freedom, and that, after everything, was more than enough. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.